I've always kept to myself, quiet, respectful, paid my HOA dues on time, even mowed the sidewalk strip outside the vacant house next door just to avoid complaints. So when Karen, our HOA president, started hovering around my property, I figured she was just being Karen. It started small. She left sticky notes on my door about my recycling bin not being pulled in within 30 minutes of pickup. Then it escalated to weekly warnings: lawn too long, car parked too far forward in my own driveway, a wind chime that violated the noise policy. I tried to ignore it until she showed up at my front door one Saturday morning, fake smile plastered on her face, and said, "We need to talk." I didn't invite her in. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. She started ranting about my uncooperative behavior, how I was disrespecting the authority of the HOA, and even suggested that if I didn't shape up, she'd have me removed from the community. I laughed. That was probably my mistake. She didn't like being laughed at. She got in my face, finger jabbing the air, calling me aggressive, unstable. I asked her to leave my property. She refused. That's when I pulled out my phone and told her I was recording. She stormed off screaming, "You're going to regret this." I didn't know how seriously she meant that. 2 days later, I got a visit from the police. "Mr. Hale, we received a report that you assaulted a neighbor, physically grabbed her during a confrontation on your front lawn." I froze. The officer was calm, professional, but I could see it in his eyes. He was already on alert. Karen's report claimed I'd violently grabbed her arm and threatened her after she asked me to comply with HOA rules. I was stunned. No one had ever accused me of anything like that. I explained exactly what happened, told them she had come onto my property. I asked her to leave, and she got mad when I pulled out my phone. Then I remembered something that saved my life: my security camera, mounted right above my front door. Full view of the porch and yard. I pulled it up on my phone and showed the officer the footage on the spot. It was all there, crystal clear. Karen approaching, me stepping outside, her screaming in my face, me staying calm, no physical contact, me asking her to leave, her refusing, me pulling my phone, her storming off. The officer nodded slowly, took down a few notes, and said, "Can you email me that footage?" I did, immediately. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking, what if I didn't have that footage? What if it was my word against hers? The next day, I got another knock on my door. Not the police this time, Karen. She looked nervous, her face pale. "You have a camera?" she asked, eyes darting. "Sure do. Caught everything," I said, arms folded. She didn't say a word, just turned around and walked away. That's when I realized this wasn't over. It was just getting started. After Karen left my doorstep that morning, I immediately backed up the footage to 2 hard drives and a cloud server. I knew better than to assume the storm was over. This wasn't just a petty neighbor feud anymore. It was a false accusation that could have ruined my life. I contacted a lawyer the same day. He watched the footage and gave a long whistle. "If this ever sees a courtroom, she's toast. But don't let your guard down. People like this, they don't back off. They double down." And boy, was he right. 2 days later, I received a formal notice from the HOA board stating that my behavior was under investigation. They claimed multiple residents had witnessed a violent altercation and I was in violation of community standards of conduct. The board wanted to fine me $500 and restrict my access to the pool and gym facilities. This was all coming from Karen. She was clearly trying to manufacture community support. I didn't even use the pool or gym, but the point was clear. She wanted to isolate and punish me publicly. What she didn't know was that I wasn't the only one she'd messed with. When I shared my story in a local Facebook group for residents, carefully leaving out her name, my inbox lit up. "Did this happen to you with Karen too?" She tried to write me up for letting my 6-year-old draw chalk on our driveway. She yelled at my wife for planting lavender, saying it wasn't on the approved plant list. Dozens of people, all targeted, all intimidated into silence or compliance. So I started documenting everything, every interaction, every letter. I talked to my neighbors and collected statements, even got a few brave folks to speak up officially. Then came the bombshell. The officer who had visited me earlier called and asked if I could come down to the station. He said Karen had submitted new evidence claiming I had doctored the footage. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. When I arrived, I showed them the original footage again, direct from the hard drive, time-stamped, watermarked by the camera system. The officer looked frustrated. She submitted a clip that was clearly edited. We can't confirm where she got it. That was the moment I knew this was bigger than HOA drama. She wasn't just trying to win a power struggle, she was trying to destroy my reputation. For what? Because I didn't bow to her authority? My lawyer filed a cease and desist letter against her for defamation, and we submitted a formal complaint to the HOA board demanding she be removed from her position. I sent them the unedited footage and over 20 neighbor statements. I thought it was enough. But the board, they didn't respond. That's when I realized Karen didn't just run the HOA. She was the HOA. The other board members were either too intimidated or too close to her to challenge her authority. So I took it one step further. I went to the city council. I filed a formal complaint and requested a public hearing on the abuse of power within our HOA. I brought everything: the footage, the statements, the police report, and my lawyer. Karen had no idea what was coming. The city council chamber was packed the day of the hearing. I didn't expect so many people to show up, but I underestimated how many residents Karen had bullied into silence. The moment my name was called and the footage began playing on the overhead screen, the room went dead quiet. There she was, shouting, jabbing her finger, stepping into my personal space, and then walking away, untouched, unharmed, not even a finger lifted against her. The council reviewed my supporting documents, statements from neighbors, a signed affidavit from the officer who reviewed the original footage. My lawyer spoke last, pointing out that Karen's false accusation wasn't just malicious, it was potentially criminal. Then something surprising happened. People in the room started standing up, one by one, to speak. A mother talked about Karen trying to fine her for excessive toy clutter when her toddler left a ball on the lawn. An elderly man said Karen had threatened to report him for unauthorized construction when he hired someone to fix his broken gutter. A veteran recounted how she accused him of violating HOA rules for flying a small American flag by his porch. The council had heard enough. One member leaned into the mic and said, "We will be launching an independent investigation into this HOA. In the meantime, we strongly advise the board to suspend the president pending review." Karen wasn't present, but she heard about it fast. The next day, the HOA sent an email announcing Karen was temporarily stepping down. But we knew it was damage control. I should have felt relief. But Karen? She wasn't done. That same week, I got an anonymous flyer in my mailbox accusing me of being dangerous and warning neighbors to watch their children. It didn't take long to trace the print job to her husband's small business, which just so happened to handle some of the HOA's old flyers. My lawyer sent a second cease and desist. This time, we included a warning. If one more defamatory statement came from her or anyone connected to her, we'd file a lawsuit. That's when the final nail hit. The police contacted me again. They had reopened their file because Karen's submission of doctored footage was now under criminal investigation. Tampering with evidence in a police matter? That's a felony. I handed over every copy, every backup, every message, including the neighbor who confirmed Karen asked her how hard it is to edit security footage. Within 2 weeks, Karen was formally charged with filing a false police report and submitting falsified evidence. When the news hit the local press, the HOA board scrambled to save face. They removed her from her position permanently. But the damage was already done. For her. She lost her job at a local accounting firm. Her husband's business was review bombed and eventually shut down. They moved out of the neighborhood quietly in the middle of the night. No one came to help. No goodbye messages. Just gone. As for me, I stayed. I rebuilt my peace, repaired my reputation, and I made sure every new resident knew 2 things. 1, this was a good neighborhood. 2, never let someone like Karen run it again. Life finally started to feel normal again, but the scars of what Karen put me through didn't fade quickly. For weeks after she moved out, I'd catch myself flinching when there was a knock on the door. I had done nothing wrong, yet I had been treated like a criminal, smeared in my own community, and almost lost everything because one woman decided she could twist reality to suit her ego. Still, I wasn't going to let fear or resentment rule my life. I took that mess and turned it into something productive. I worked with a few other neighbors, some of whom had also been harassed by Karen, and we campaigned to reform the HOA. We pushed for term limits, required open financial records, and introduced a resident oversight committee to hold board members accountable. It wasn't easy, and we hit plenty of resistance from Karen's remaining allies, but eventually we pushed the reforms through. The community supported us because, after all that chaos, they were finally awake to how bad it had gotten. It felt good, like justice. But it wasn't just about HOA politics. This whole situation had opened my eyes to how easily someone can be targeted and destroyed by lies, especially if you don't have proof. If I didn't have that security camera, I'd probably be in jail. That's not an exaggeration. Karen's accusations were detailed, manipulative, and deliberate. And if I had even raised my voice that day, she might have gotten away with it. So I decided to do more than just fix things locally. I wrote a public post on a neighborhood watchdog blog, anonymously at first, detailing everything that happened: the accusation, the footage, the retaliation. It got thousands of views. People from all over the country messaged saying they'd been through something similar. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just a Karen problem, it was a power problem. Give the wrong person a clipboard and a title, and they'll think they're queen of the world. But people are tired of it. They're speaking up now, recording, reporting, exposing. A few months after the post went viral, I got a call from a local podcast host. He wanted me to come on and tell my story. I was nervous, but I said yes. If even one person hears it and thinks to install a door camera or speak up against false accusations, it'll be worth it. The interview was raw, honest. I held nothing back, not my fear, not my anger, not even the part where I questioned whether people would believe me just because of how convincing Karen made herself look. It changed everything. The episode blew up, and suddenly I wasn't the guy who had a weird fight with the HOA lady. I was the guy who stood up, documented the truth, and held her accountable. I still live in the same house, the same street. But now, when I walk around the block, people nod. They smile. Some even thank me. Not because I'm a hero, but because I didn't back down. Because I proved that even when someone tries to destroy you with lies, the truth, especially on video, will always be louder. The end.